Colonel Shen-Gunther will now give us an overview of military research and the Department of Clinical Investigation. Colonel Shen-Gunther is the Chief of the Department of Clinical Investigation, as well as a gynecologic oncologist, associate professor at UT Health, and an active researcher. Her research interests includes HPV genotyping, epigenetics, and next-generation sequencing. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Shen-Gunther.
The Brooke Army Medical Center's Department of Clinical Investigation has a long, rich history. In celebration of the department's 50th anniversary, we have created a short video to tell you about our story. It illustrates how global conflicts and new emerging health threats have influenced us and our research over the decades. The Clinical Investigation Service was established at the end of the Vietnam War. Like most institutions that achieve excellence, DCI was guided by a visionary who saw a critical void to be filled. Dr. Rudy Ansbacher was appointed as the first chief shortly after being assigned to Brooke Army Medical Center. They started with 2 staff members without dedicated space nor a laboratory. This was Brooke Army Medical Center in the mid-70s. DCI finally had a dedicated space to call home in 1974. A laboratory space with administrative offices were constructed. 2 DCI scientists and laboratory technician, Private Harris Plant are shown here. In the early years, there was a healthy number of research protocols, however publications were scant. One of the earliest publications found in PubMed before the department was established was on electrical injuries, tissue damage and proper surgical management. Another was on food poisoning of 6 submariners who ate Swiss cheese on board the USS Benjamin Franklin. Then came the 80s. Madonna became the artist of the decade, and research picked up steam. One of the most incredible stories from the 80s worth telling was the collaboration between Army Major Dr. Schatz, who was a cardiologist at Brooke, Dr. Julio Palmas, interventional radiologist at UT Health Science Center, and Phil Romano, a restaurateur and financier. Dr. Palmas was the researcher, inventor of the balloon expandable stents. Dr. Schatz was the gutsy cardiologist who was instrumental in orchestrating the placement in patient number 1 in Brazil in 1987. With Johnson & Johnson's financial backing, the coronary stent was approved by the FDA in 1994. Today more than 2 million stents are placed in patients annually. The coronary stent market is valued to reach $8.7 billion by 2027. As for the original Palmas stent, it is now on display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. Then came the 90s. In the 80s and 90s, the world was confronted with a new deadly virus, without a viable treatment or vaccine. In the film, Philadelphia, Tom Hanks portrays a young lawyer with AIDS, confronting emotional and legal struggles.
Sir, wouldn't you be more comfortable in a research room?
No. Would it make you more comfortable?
Beckett, how you doing?
Counselor.
Did you find a lawyer?
In a story about our lives.
Oh, Mom, today's a good day.
Our fears.
Andy brought AIDS into our offices.
And our humanity.
I hate this case.
This is a photo of young Dr. Anthony Fauci at NIH leading HIV research during the AIDS epidemic. At Brooke, oncologists also started to witness HIV's immunosuppressive effects on cancer growth. Army Lieutenant Colonel Tom Burke reported such a case in a 33-year-old woman who succumbed to a rapidly progressing cervical cancer within 3 months of recurrence. After leaving the Army, Dr. Burke joined MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, where he continues to be a physician, scientist, and leader. Collaborative medical oncology research between Brooke and UT started in 1974. Many clinical trials are documented in our annual historical records. The most notable collaboration was between Dr. Howard Burris, while he was a fellow at Brooke, and Dr. Von Hoff, a faculty at UT. Many new collaborative chemotherapy trials were conducted and published by them. Today, they are well-recognized leaders and innovators of medical oncology at the global level. Then came a time of global turbulence. Over the last 2 decades, with Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, there have been hundreds of publications on war surgery, acute trauma care, and rehabilitation coming out of Brooke Army Medical Center and the U.S. Army Institute of Surgical Research. These publications came from surgeons and scientists working at Brooke and the U.S. Army ISR. In the next clip, we pay tribute to Dr. Pruitt, who was a consummate surgeon-scientist, leader, and mentor to generations of young physicians and scientists for over 50 years. He served in the U.S. Army for 32 years, and then professor of surgery at UT for another 24 years. I was very fortunate to have met him at the History of Medicine lecture series held regularly at the UT Medical Library.
So it's been a great career, and of course the big reward is the improvement to the patient. The second reward is you just relish the success of all the colleagues with whom you've worked. And that's been a real satisfaction to see our 13 chairs of surgery, 2 of urology, 2 of pediatric surgery, 4 in anesthesiology, a couple chairs of medicine, and then 8 out of 9 Japanese fellows, 3 of them have become chairs. So this is just a great satisfaction. It might not ever be possible again because there's no longer a draft.
Our last story is the coronavirus pandemic. It is a collection of images from Brooke, with music by Ennio Morricone, played by violinist Lina Yokoyama, on top of a hospital roof in Cremona, Italy. Thank you for joining us in celebration of our 50th anniversary. I hope you enjoy the rest of our program.